Recording now. Thank you, Amy. All right. I won't say all that again, but welcome to those of you joining on the video. I just forgot to press record. All right. So today we are looking at MS Codex 725, technically oversized. And you probably can't tell quite there. It's very tall and skinny. It is a tall and skinny book. Let me pull it over here so you can see very thin, tall and thin. This is a history. It includes biblical history, church history, and then popes. Popes up to Sixtus IV. So the end of the 15th century. And I looked up the author of this text right before we started. His name is Werner Rollwink. He lived from 1425 to 1502. And this text was incredibly popular during his lifetime and beyond. So he wrote it in 1447. Or 1474. So from that point onward, there were many, many printed editions and obviously manuscript copies as well. I want to start by taking a quick look at the binding. This is listed in the catalog as a contemporary binding, which means that it is a binding from the later 15th century, but we're not making a claim that it was the original binding on here. You can see it's wooden boards with leather over top. It's been rebacked, which means that somebody at some point came through and put, it sort of reaffixed the original leather to the boards. There's been a lot of chewing action happening here, so a lot of worms and such, and some of it's come up, but you can still see the stamping from that leather. So considering the condition of it, it's actually pretty well preserved. So one of the things that I love about this manuscript is it is historical, and it doesn't only have text, although the first 2 pages have text only. But once you get to about the 3rd page, what you're going to see is down the middle of the page is a timeline. And this timeline is going to continue all the way through the book. And it starts, perhaps not surprisingly, with Adam and Eve. So we have Adam and Eve here. We have Noah here. One of the things that's a little bit difficult about showing this book is that I can't open it very wide. So I will be moving the camera around a little bit to get you a better sense of that. Oop, no, I have confused my phone. No, don't do that. Well, I'm going to try. There we go. So here's Noah. Here's Noah's Ark up here. So a nice little diagram of the Ark. And then we'll see these lines coming out. And this is showing Noah's children, and then his children's families, and so on. So we're starting with biblical history. This is written on paper, by the way, and that's another thing that makes it a little difficult to handle this. The paper isn't always in fantastic condition, so I'm trying to be careful with it. I'm doing what I can. So some of these diagrams, there are a few diagrams, and some of them are colored. So here we have the Tower of Babel. Here, Babel, it even has the name. And if you know your biblical history, everybody used to speak the same language, and then people got proud and built this tower, and then the tower collapsed, and now we all speak different languages. Something like that. So here we are, timeline, continuing through. At some point, oh, I didn't notice this before. We have Janus, Saturnus. That was sort of, so it's, I guess, not only Bible. unless there's a lot in the Bible that I don't know very well. So if you see anyone you recognize, speak up, or if we get to a spot where you'd like to, classical history too, thank you, Amy. If you get to a spot where you'd like me to zoom in a little bit, I can do that. So here's the Great Temple. We have Solomon. Here, David, very important. So we're very slowly kind of moving through this great history of the world as perceived by this one guy in the 15th century. Oh, I have a private question, which I'm going to address because it's a good question and people do ask us sometimes. It's about why I'm handling it with bare hands. So I know that in movies you see often people put on gloves to handle books. In real life, clean, dry hands is the best practice. So the only time I will ever wear gloves is if I'm holding a book that might hurt me. So we have a manuscript we bought last year. It has its pages have been coated in white lead, which can poison you. And so I wear gloves when I handle that book. Otherwise, not. And yes, thank you, Amy has put a blog post in there. There are a lot of blog posts that you can find online about this that will explain a little bit more. But thanks for that question. Basically, as long as you're careful, clean, dry hands are always going to be better than gloves. You could actually, especially this one, because the paper is quite frayed on the edges. You can actually get paper caught on the gloves. So thank you for asking that question. Okay, so I was looking for this earlier and I couldn't find it. I love this. So this is Rome. This is the founding of Rome. We have Romulus and Remus up there. Not a photo, but you can see, or not a photo. You're not actually seeing them, but you're seeing the thing. I just love that. That one there in particular. All right. So we've got to the founding of Rome, and eventually, I'm not sure what this is, but we have a little diagram down here. Let's go to Skoda. I wish I knew what that was, if anyone recognizes that. Amy, do you know what that is? No. All right. I think that, there's probably been a lot of work. I don't know about this manuscript, but if the text is that popular, I'm sure there's been a lot of work done on it. Eventually, we're going to reach this. This is what I've been waiting for. So if you get any biblical history, eventually you're going to have to get to Jesus. So here we have Joseph and Mary are here, and then here's Jesus, and then we have points in his life there, and then okay, there's another private question to me about if this book is scanned. Amy, can you put in the record again? So this has been scanned, and there is a record, there are links from the record. So this is a diagram of the Gospels. So we have John, Luke, Matthew, and Mark, and they're sort of they're separate, and then they're all together. And then we have along the outside, we have the 12 apostles, Matthew, Peter, John, Judas over here. So, I should zoom out a little bit. You can see that much better, I think, on that the digital version. But here we have the Gospels and then the apostles. What are the pointy blobs? I was wondering that too, because when I looked at the digital copy, honestly, I thought they were petals, flower petals, and they still look like flower petals. But I'm not actually sure. And I am afraid to touch them. So I'm not going to touch them, but they even look like they might be, I think they're drawings that kind of look like flower petals. But they're different. All four of them are different. So I am not sure. All right. And I don't know what they might have to do with the Gospels. Okay, so now we've moved past Jesus, we've got the Gospels, we've got the 12 apostles. So this is where we're going to start to see the popes. And this is where we're going through the leadership of the church post Jesus. And it is not, I mean, I don't know anything really about early church popes. It is interesting that there is, I'll move this up a little bit so you can see, there is this other timeline that sort of is running parallel. So we've had this large timeline here, and there have been branches going out. And thank you, Amy. Right, the Roman emperors are then set up here. So we've sort of got this connection between, even though they're not connected, it's implied connection between the Roman emperors and the popes there. So at least connecting the church to Rome. There's Gregory. I'll point out names that I recognize. Leo. And it's interesting. I like how they're sort of spaced. So there's some more space between some of them. And then here we have three in a quick row. So Leo. And I feel like I should mention there are dates. There's running dates. I assume they're dates, the numbers that run across the top. And now we're in the 6,000s. And I'm not, is this from I'm looking at Amy. This is from the beginning of the world, I'm guessing. Right. So we're actually numbering out. So this is 6,093 years after God made the world. Here. Oh yes, and here are the eight. Thank you. I didn't even notice that. So the post the AD or BC are BCE dates are no BCE CE dates are underneath. All right, let's keep going. Oh, there's Carolus. And this is the right date. So there's Charlemagne, essentially, right there. Charlemagne in the 9th century. I didn't plan that, but I'm glad that happened there. Let's see. Lots of popes all together here. They really went through them, didn't they? In the 9th century or 10th century, 11th century, 1128, 1129. 1198, Urbanus. Let's see. There's Otto up there. Nicholas. And we're going to look at another couple of books in a second. And I really want you to notice how well this timeline works, right? I hope, I would love to hear if this confused anyone. It seems to be pretty clear, like you go from left to right, and you've got circles for the popes and for the Roman emperors up here. And then we're getting very close to the end. And then here we are, here's Sixtus. And we're done. Here's Sixtus. And we're done. And the timeline is pretty effective. Now, I want to compare this with another couple of books that also are historical and have diagrams of this kind of history. So we can bring this out again before we end if you have questions. But I want to show the other ones first. So I just need to get this out of the way. The first thing I want to show you is a kind of thing, you might not have seen this one before. If you are a long time Coffee with a Codex attendee, and you were here, oh gosh, it's been a year ago. We looked at MS Roll 1066, which is a giant genealogical roll that we have, that's a Edward IV roll. So it sort of is the beginning of the world up to Edward IV of England. This is a much smaller roll that I'm going to show you. This is MS Roll 1588. Yes, thank you, Amy. She just put the text in. Let me zoom in a little bit before I do this. Zoom, zoom, zoom. And this is what a genealogy looks like, or like a timeline, if you want to think of it like that, in a roll form. Would you help me? Can you move those? And then if you can just hold that. Thank you. All right, so this is a genealogical roll. So we have the lines here. We have three lines running in parallel, and then one of them sort of goes away. And then we come down here. Let's take that, and I just want to unroll it a little bit more. If we can still it. Would you mind holding that again? Okay, so I have a question from Corrine about, is the roll backed on new paper? Yeah, at some point, I don't know when, someone thought it would be a good idea to encase this old parchment, which, as you can see, it's damaged on the edges. It's in some kind of lamination. I'm not entirely sure what. This is not best practice. We would not do this today. Yeah, that's why it looks like this. So in a roll, rolls are great for doing this kind of time-based diagram, right? Because you start at the top and it just keeps going and going and going and going. And so it's almost like whoever did the manuscript for MS Codex 725 was like, well, how can I make this work in a book? Well, a scroll you go top from bottom, and a book you read left from right. So why don't we do this timeline left to right? And they did that, and it works really well. So I'm going to show you one more thing. Take this away. There's a couple of questions. It's vellum or parchment that's encased in some kind of paper. It's actually there's a backing and then there's something on the front. So I'm not entirely sure how they did it, but there's paper on the back. The different colored lines, yes. So the lines that are different colors would refer to different family lines. I don't know what they mean in this case particularly, but generally it's saying these are like there's some kind of different family line happening. All right, so the other thing that you can do is, I'll just keep it, it's fine, is what they tried to do in this manuscript, which is LJS 266. This is another genealogy. It's the genealogy of Christ, I think. The important thing is that what this is well, first we've got this beautiful first page. I do like this first page a lot. Most of it does not look like this. So here, immediately, there's some kind of genealogy happening. Actually, we're starting again with Adam and Eve. So you've got Adam and Eve up at the top, and Cain and Abel and Seth. And now we're going on, and it sort of ends at the bottom of the page. And then it picks up again, not immediately, apparently. And so it picks up again. Here we've got Noah. And then over here, we've got a line sort of coming down off the page. and you turn the page and you look at the top, and it's sort of starting again. And then we get 2 lines coming down. And the point that I hope I'm making, and then there's nothing on the next page. So where does it go? Is that copying the roll, the way that a roll does the diagramming, copying that exactly as it is into a Codex book doesn't work very well, because the book, although in one sense you do read top to bottom, it doesn't work the way a roll works in terms of being, nonstop. And this, it's pretty difficult actually to figure out what is happening in MS LJS 266, because the format just doesn't work. And I think the MS Codex 725, the big one with the timeline that goes from left to right, is just basically, I'm in awe of that scribe, I think, or whoever came up with that. They did a great job. Kudos to them. Bran, he says, I love that you're showing these different variations, because no lie, I was thinking during the first manuscript, this is a really good translation from a roll. Yeah, you could take that and put it on a roll and it would work, like from top to bottom, I think. So I got on a little soapbox. I just wanted to talk about this format and how, moving a text from one format to another, it really makes a difference sort of how it's done. And there are good ways of doing it and not so great ways of doing it. Although I'm a big fan of this manuscript because it's trying so very hard. Claire says an accordion book would work too. An accordion book would work. I don't think we have, all of our accordion books are Asian. I don't think we have any, but it would work. Yeah. So they're doing what they can. So we still have 5 minutes. So I'm going to get MS Codex 725 back, because that is the one that we're here to talk about. And I will sort of page through it a little bit more. And if you guys have any questions or things that you wanted to see, we can do that. Oh, all right. Michelle has a great question, which is, are the other 2 books from the same time period? I think that the other one is. So MS Codex 725 is from after 1471. So this is after 1471. MS Roll 1588 is between 1425 and 1450. So also 15th century, but a little bit earlier. And LJS 266 is between 1440 and 1460. So also right around the same time, but a little bit earlier, like 10 to 30 years earlier. Yeah, so about the same. Actually, I was noticing, if we want to go look at bindings again, that the binding for LJS 266 is not, oh, it's a little hard, the lights here aren't great, but it's not dissimilar. It's a different shape, but it's the same kind of leather overboard with, it had metal clasps on it, and stamps in the leather. So not dissimilar. Although 266 is on parchment and 725 is on paper. Am I right? I'm going to double check. Yeah, it's parchment. So here's this, and we'll just take another look at that timeline. Oh yeah, and here's dates there. So 1317, 1388. And I didn't really point out, but there's a lot, aside from the main timeline, there's a lot happening on these pages, sort of down, and a lot of text that I just sort of passed over there. And a lot of, here we've got 1, 2, 3 parallel timelines that are parallel to the main one. So they took their history very seriously. I mentioned briefly the MS roll 1066, and I think that's an interesting example of how people in the Middle Ages sort of can conceptualize history. It wasn't to necessarily to like, how do I say this? It was like they were building themselves. They were building their own history. And it's not what really happened. It's sort of what makes me what I am or who I am. So the Edward IV roll, it's basically about Edward IV tracing his line back through all of the important lines all the way back to Jesus and all the way back to Adam and Eve. You know, it's not necessarily true, but it's history, and it's his history, and it's proving that he should be the king instead of that other guy who he was like second cousins with. It's not like he didn't share, you know, you go back a few generations and it was the same, which has always sort of amused me a lot about that, but there we go. Yeah, Matilde says MS Roll 1066 is gorgeous. It is. If you'd like to see it, there is a Coffee with a Codex video that you can see. We unrolled the whole thing in this room, and it was really impressive. It's a beautiful manuscript, but I like this one too. And, you know, the author of this text was doing something really similar, I think, to what the people who made the Edward IV and those other genealogical rolls are doing, and that he's tracing, you know, Pope Sixtus in a sense all the way back and saying this is who he is and this is why he's important. So I will leave you with this central, we've got Joseph and Mary and Jesus right there. So thank you, everyone. I hope you'll come back next week and check out our videos on YouTube. We record them. If I remember, we record them and put them up. So thanks, everybody. And I hope to see you all again soon. Thank you, Amy.